All right, what's going on, guys? Dr. Matt here, host of the Rocks Lab podcast. We have another special guest on today, Sarah McCaffery.
Hi. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited that we're able to connect and do this together. So thank you.
From the other side of the East Coast, because you're down in South Florida. I'm up in Rhode Island, New England area. So cool that we're able to have this conversation. Cool technology, cool all around. Our weather's a little different than yours right now. We just got hit with like 2 feet of snow, and you're probably a little more sunny.
Absolutely. My family sent me photos. They're up in Massachusetts, and then I still have a lot of clients in New York sending me photos of like the snow beyond like trash cans trying to shovel. And so it would always feel bad complaining because it did get cold today and
Yeah.
it's going to get record cold, but not what you guys are all experiencing. And definitely when I hear about that, I'm like, well, it is blue skies. And I just walked out of the pool like not too long ago. Can't complain too much.
That's awesome. So I'll give people just basically a quick background, introduction or background of kind of who you are and what you do, and obviously fill in the gaps if I'm missing anything, and we'll dive deep into your history as well. And I do like to start off with rapid fire questions too, so we'll get to those in a second. But so like you said, or we're working in New York City, Manhattan, and bouncing between there and South Florida.
Hmm.
Uh, you're founder of the Lab Method gym, and basically your mantra or your tagline is you help people become the best version of themselves, move with strength, power, grace, and help people train, help people get healthy. Any do you want to expand on that at all? Did I leave any? I know it's a quick elevator pitch, but
Yeah, so I am Sarah McCaffery, also known as Coach Sarah, for years and years, especially when I was living in New York City. And I would always find it kind of comical because I'm a fairly small human being and I was training athletes like 6+ and above guys. And they would always say, yes, Coach Sarah. Yes, Coach Sarah. So I stuck with me for years and years. And even my husband now, when we were dating, he had me saved in his phone as Coach Sarah. And so I spent 15 years in New York City, a sizable private training business, and was running studios as well in Manhattan, and all boutique functional strength and performance based studios. And just about 2 years ago, we moved down to Delray Beach just because we had lived in the city for so long and did it, loved it, and we're ready to spend this part of our chapter by the ocean in sunshine. And always had the intention of when it was my time to leave the city, that's when I would open up a studio. And Delray is just the perfect place to do what we did. It has been well received. And we can dive more into the studio itself. So now currently balancing running the lab, my own private training business in person, as well as still online. So juggling a lot of hats. And then I also have two big bears that I take care of, my two dogs that they are like bears. So juggling a lot of things, but that's kind of what we do, right? Especially as entrepreneurs, and trainers or PTs, it's like, no, we don't have that one avenue, but really in order to, I think, be successful in the field, it's like we actually have to go down a couple avenues as long as they all fall under that same umbrella. So I've always been strength and performance for longevity, and it has looked very different over the course of these 15 years. And even my own career, at one point, I was doing a lot of online, I was teaching a lot of classes, or I was only doing private training. But under that umbrella, it was always still like, what is my core? Strength and performance for longevity. So yeah, that's a little bit of background in a nutshell. I'll try and keep it there because we can get a little deeper.
well, I love that. I love that. I don't think I asked you this before, but what kind of dogs do you have?
Two American Akitas. One, he is 3, and then the other one, she is 6 months. And Maverick is a gentle giant, so chill, laid back. And then Goose, she's a maniac. They're the complete opposite, but they go everywhere with me. Maverick's actually on the website of the lab as the ambassador. He's under the trainers page with his own headshot and bio, and he's there on a regular basis. So they're also they're such a big part of my life and my life in the gym and then outside. So had to give them a shout out.
Cool, awesome. The other point you mentioned, which is one point we connected on immediately, was Delray, which I go to Boynton Beach quite frequently because we have an aunt that lives there, and it really truly is a beautiful area. I have a friend, my friend Sam, who I think we connected with it as well.
Mhm.
Great area, great area of Florida. Obviously, I feel like you mentioned, like probably cultural wise, like the very different from the probably like the fast paced nature of Manhattan, like and like so probably a cool transition for you.
Yes, and honestly though, and this was unexpected, but a pleasant surprise, like it is Delray is booming, but it is still very much a beach town and Boynton. It's all they're very similar, same that when we were looking on leaving the city, and we know Miami, we know Fort Lauderdale, and just a few people had mentioned Delray. And now that we've moved down here,
Mm,
everyone is from like the tri-state area, and it's not just the snowbirds, like the people that have moved down in the last 5 years or even 6 months. And there's a lot of young professionals, a lot of entrepreneurs. Like no one really works a regular 9 to 5 down here. And why I said it was like really the perfect place to open up this studio is that there is such a wealth of health and wellness down
mm,
here. And like everyone truly prioritizes like taking care of themselves. And it can look very different. Like in the city, what we had access to were gyms, but down here, seeing people walking, running, bike riding at 7 a.m. on a Sunday is just a regular thing. Or having resources of like, where did you get your eggs? From my neighbor because they have chickens, or from a farm that delivers on a weekly basis, like, whether it's food, produce, or anything like that. And like you have access to it because that's what people really want in this area. So that was also when we were looking on relocating, those were two big checks that we wanted to mark off is that lots of entrepreneurs, being one myself, and then also a community that is prioritizes health and wellness. So even though I say it is like still a surf town, it is a booming area and that continues to grow and grow. And it's like continuing able to find those like-minded people that, oh, you want to go to a wellness event on Saturday where we can do workouts, connect with others, cold plunge, sauna, and eat healthy food. Awesome. Because we were missing that in New York. And I think it's also because it's just beautiful weather down here too. So we're able to have that year round. Like obviously New York City has plenty of those events, but like we can be outside every year round. So we're able to have such activities and events all the time, which is super cool.
yeah, and I love that you mentioned that too because that's kind of part of like as I was looking into your guys' gym, your business, something that you guys take very seriously is the community, like the social, like the event aspect of it. So I want to kind of dive into that for a second. So I mean the gym, the lab, and I this pulled from your website, your Instagram. Functional
Mhm.
strength training, 3,000 square feet in Delray Beach. You're big on evidence based, big on functional strength training, big on personal training. But you have that social club aspect, like social events. So yeah, tell me. I mean, it probably goes into the whole culture of Florida, but tell me more about because that's different than a lot of what gyms are doing.
It is, but you can also look at some of the trends like that have been popping up, these social, like people right now are still craving like connection,
Mm,
right? And in this area, and I'll go back to New York City, like there's a gym like on every block, every corner. And even when I was in the city, I was like, what makes us different to them going across the street? It's not always the programming, it's not always the amenities, it's not always the flashy equipment that they have, but it's how people feel when
mhm.
they walk in and then how people feel when they leave. And goes back to that connection. And especially in this day and age with social media, AI, or instant gratification, people more and more are truly craving that organic authenticity connection with someone, right? And so that's why I think more social events, more social clubs have been popping up. But so yes, the training side that the lab does is truly functional strength and conditioning for longevity. And we both know that that can look very different, or those words can be tossed around often. But at our core, we are a strength facility. You can't just move heavy. You also have to be agile, right? And we have to prime the body correctly before we build that strength. So we do a fine balance within a class setting, which is really hard to come by, where you'll see for strength days, you'll see the compound lifts. And most people who have stepped in to the studio had never done strength training before, because we don't see barbells often. We don't see the compound lifts often in a group setting. Why? Because it's always that risk to reward, but it's how we set it up and how it's formatted, and how then the approach and the delivery too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure like you've heard it before many times, like, and I've heard it before in the industry. Oh, I have to get fit before I work out with you, or before I take class. Well, no, that's actually the whole reason why you're in here. And it's about meeting people where they are right now, building that strong foundation, and then gradually progressing them. So that is truly what we're able to do. In under the lab method, like that is, it's, the gym is called the lab, but then our style of training, we've call it that method. And our strength is progressive throughout the month. So they'll see those same 3 lifts every week. And then it's always paired with some kind of accessory, something to balance out. And then at the end, the third block is also more so a metabolic block, because we understand like people go to the gym and they do want to get their heart rate up. They do need it, and they want to get a sweat on. So we have found that fine balance of like, what does strength training look like? You're not rushing from one movement to the next, but you actually have time to build and to develop those lifts. And then we also have our cardio days too, which are a little bit faster pace, but still very intentional and cohesive. And that's really what the program is looked at. So you could go Monday through Saturday, and each day supports one another. It's not random. It is not, you won't see the same movements, because our instructors are doing their own programming. So I know it's common too. It's like, oh, we just did swings and thrusters and chin-ups on Monday. I'm super sore. And now I come to Matt's class and we're doing the same thing, you know? So that is why we have a specific program. I oversee all of the programming for it. So that is that, the training side of it. And then our social side of it is going back to how can we build relationships? How can we strengthen connections? How can we build this community? And that has been in the forefront of, we opened about a year and a half ago, and it's always like community based, evidence driven training. And so how we do that is that we'll have events in house. We collaborate with other local businesses, especially Delray. It is filled with local businesses, and again, small business owners. And so we always, it's such an even mutual exchange of wanting to support one another. So we'll do social events in-house with different businesses, but then we also will do a happy hour. We've done a beach day. We will partner with local restaurants on the Ave for those happy hours. And we do those about every month too. So it is truly beyond that workout. And then we will do about every other month or once a quarter, we host workshops. I just did a kettlebell workshop that Perform Better sponsored a couple weeks ago. That is always complimentary for our members. And then as a way to get other outsiders, we will also make it readily available. So, and those are always such a great turnout, because truly what we've cultivated is that people that want to not just get a sweat on and check that box off, but they want to learn and they want to develop. And again, it just goes back to like, how is this information being delivered so that they eagerly want to improve on their swings? They want to feel stronger in their deadlift. So we create that space where it's like, outside of a class, you can learn and develop it too. So that's a little bit of the social part. We also will engage in community events out in town. Like we just participated in what's called the Winter Games at the Club Del Rey. It's a wellness event they do once a month. So the lab participated in that, and we competed, and it was so fun. There were about 10 different gyms that came together um, and to participate. So that's a little bit of the social side of what we do at the lab.
That's super cool. I love that.
Yeah.
You mentioned like you're bringing it all back to me. Is the Ave, is that Atlantic Ave? Am I?
Atlantic Ave,
Atlantic
yeah.
Ave. Okay. Last time I was there,
I talk as if everyone knows what that is. Yeah, so
I'm like, that's
Atlantic
where I
Ave
was.
is
Yeah.
like our main strip that has a bunch of boutiques and a ton of restaurants. Coming from New York City, like the restaurant scene was like really important. And we came down and we're like, okay, we can totally vibe with what's going on. So, yes, the Ave is Atlantic Ave, the main strip of Delray.
Love that. All right, cool. So that, I mean, that's fantastic. Obviously, you guys are running a great gym, and I love what you said about like with the group training. Like you're doing more than, and nothing against it, but just like quick hit movements over and over and over again every day. You're like, all right, we're gonna teach people how to move better, lift better. And if for those who want to learn even more, we have workshops that to help people there. And I like how you said that. Yes, we want to incorporate some level of metabolic conditioning too, because you're not wrong. Like if you go to a class, you want to feel like you've got a workout in too. You want to get your heart up, you want to get a sweat going. So I think that's a really nice balance. A really good balance of all the important things for what people need to get done in an hour or however long the class is.
Exactly. And I think like just we've been able to piece together, and I am super grateful and blessed that I've had the experience of working in different gyms and I have mentors myself throughout those years of training. And so it is really a hybrid of a variety of methodologies. And whether it is from my own experience in a group setting, working with private clients, or even training myself of seeing like what does work, what doesn't, still continuing to educate myself. And then also seeing is that just a trend? Is that cool now? Or does this really work too? And so those are all questions that constantly asking myself. And then even looking too of like, and I'm also very open. I'll ask, we have seasoned top tier instructors that work at the lab and ask them, like, how is it going in your classes? How are you feeling? Are we missing anything in the programming? And because I think too, it's all, especially for other gym owners or other studios, it's so easy to maybe add more just to do more or to change it up just because that's what we think the consumer might want. And staying true to like, this, we simplified things. It's not boring by any means. And I feel like these are such direct parallels of like my own personal life, like leaving the city. We simplified it, but it's not boring at all. And with some aspects of strength training, it's there are elements of boring. Like we'll hit the same compound lifts for years and years, why? Because it works. But finding that hybrid and finding that balance where we're not only building strength, but again, we're working on the power development and being able to get that metabolic. So we're able to truly develop strong athletes, whether they played sports growing up or maybe they just never even wanted to play sports and there's zero athleticism when they walk through the door, they're able to develop that too, because that's also important when people are looking at their own movement practice.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I think it sounds like you've obviously like by the way you describe the classes and the trainers and everything, like, oh, you've had experience in multiple different revenues and you've taken the best of the best and like and figured out a method that works for you guys, which is fan. It almost sounds like, oh, like you could like I don't know if you do this already, but like do you sell your group programming to like other gyms or do you just keep it in house?
We don't at the moment, and that is something that I've thought about, or anyone that's like, because this area can be very transient
Mm,
too. And so people will be like, oh, I'm leaving for a month, I'm leaving for 3 months. And that's where I'm like, okay, we have the programming. It's really just like wrapping it up and putting it with a big bow on it. So people could be like, I'm gone, but I want to buy a month's worth or I want to buy 3 months worth so that way I can come back. We have not done that yet, but that is something that down the road would definitely want to do.
that's cool. So I hope I didn't skip over this too much from earlier, but I did want to get into it a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about, and it kind of like leading up until how you started the lab essentially, but your background of kind of like athletics and fitness, and then how you got into this space like in the first place?
Absolutely. I feel like I should have said that in my intro. And as
That's all
people are
right.
listening, they're still like, who is this person? Yes. And I will try and keep it in a nutshell. And this kind of goes back to the training that we just discussed on the importance of being able to develop like that sense of athleticism, whether someone played sports or they didn't. Because growing up, I never played sports. And it's very apparent when there's any kind of med ball work in a program or hand eye coordination. But I developed it as an adult and with through the style of training that I do myself and now and teach others. Growing up, I danced competitively at a high level, though. So people will be like, "Well, that's a sport." Yes, in its own way, and I've learned like body mechanics, self awareness. It just didn't have any hand eye coordination. The
Mm.
throwing, the catching. That's where it shows that I did not have play sports growing up. Um, in college, I studied musical theater and then still danced as well. And then I danced professionally in my 20s and early 30s. And I got into training. Like I started going to the gym before high school classes because I started to taper off from competing so much and started focusing on other things. And so that's when I was first exposed to group fitness. And I actually reconnected recently in the last year down here with one of my very first group instructors from 20 plus years ago. So, anyway, so I was in New York City. I was doing musical theater professionally. That's the sole reason why I moved there and had 2 years of living abroad, living in South Korea, doing musical theater. And during that time, we didn't have a lot of resources to still work out and to still train. And so this is how long ago this was. We were doing DVDs of P90X and like
I
Jillian Michaels, like DVDs. That's where I'm at in my lifetime and my age. We worked through those, and the team that I had, they're like, you should really consider going into fitness when you get back to the States and when you might are in between maybe theater jobs. So I was like, sure, that would be great, but it's one of the largest cities with one of the top fitness industries in the world. And I got certified, but I was like, I have zero experience. Fast forward, my first job in the fitness scene was at a kickboxing studio. I picked it up very quickly from my dance background. And I remember the very first class I taught, I was like, this is my calling. This is my purpose. I'm super grateful that I was able to have the career I did in theater and musical theater, but that was truly my purpose to guide and teach people in that way. Um, and instead of what I was doing. So I had a handful of years that I was going back and forth personally of like, this will be my job that I book that I'm like, I still want to do musical theater, but I had a really hard time going back and forth because it was something that I should do and I was able to do well in it. So I had a handful of years and I had shifted since I had always done strength training. There are many benefits and I enjoy doing kickboxing, but I was also teaching there would be like 30 people in a class and I was like, I can't create a strong enough impact teaching that many people because you're just kind of crowd controlling.
yeah.
So shifted more into small groups, shifted more into boutique style, and shifted more into functional strength training within like 2 years of doing that. Um, at some point, I fully retired from musical theater and dove full time into training. And that's when my fitness career really skyrocketed. And I was able to connect with different companies like and contribute work as far as working for Women's Health, Oxygen, My Fitness Pal, and then was also started working in boutique studios and in the top studios in the city,
Cool.
and became one of the top trainers in the city. So definitely worked my way up, and super blessed with those that mentored me along the way, those that I worked for along the way, and the people that I was able to connect with. And then at that point, we were through that time, I had been approached of opening up a studio in New York City a few times. And it just, even though I was there for 15 years, I knew it wasn't going to be my forever, or I just knew New York was not where I wanted to open up a studio. And I was always like, when I do my exit, that will be my next chapter.
Nice.
And driving to the lab early in the morning, had this realization. I was like, you were in the city for 15 years. Never were you eager to open up a studio? I knew that's always was the path that I wanted to do, but we moved down here and within a year we opened it. And it was just the right people, the right space, the right location. And in a year and a half, we are really reaching capacity and we're looking at expansion. So it's super, super exciting that in a short period of time to see that growth and to have had the town welcome us with such open arms.
So cool.
So that was not in a nutshell at all, Matt,
That's
but
okay. That's
so
okay.
I tried.
That's okay. Is it not out there yet, or do you know where your expansion will be? And if you're not ready to say yet either, that's fine too.
More details to come.
Hey, all right, love that. Very cool. Okay, yeah. So, um, I just was super interested in the background, and I think people will find a lot of value out of that. So that's cool. Did you do? Was it what type of dance was it? Was it ballet? Was it something different
Yeah.
or ballet?
So I grew up doing everything ballet, tap, acrobatics, gymnastics, contemporary, it all. And then in my adult life, I really focused on musical theater, more contemporary jazz. Even though I never played sports, I always was more of an athletic dancer. Um, After I retired from it, I still danced for fun, but I started doing it because it was no longer my job. I was like, this is what brings me joy. And I was doing it up until we moved out of the city. And when did I retired probably like 8 years ago. It's been a while. So I still dance for fun. But that's where I think too, also, some of my training background is I do a lot of kettlebell work outside of strength and performance. For years, I would have people just come to me just to learn kettlebells and developed a lot of like kettlebell flow work. I didn't realize at the time it was called flow. I was just putting movements together. And my dance background kind of like drew me to that style of movement. Like training could be super isolated depending on your style, depending on your goals. Back day, buys, tries, chest. And I've always approached movement as, well, your body should move as one unit. It supports one another. So why would we isolate it? That's just my own personal style and training. And that comes from my dance background. So when I gravitated towards kettlebells, I was like, all right, I'm going to deadlift it. I'm going to clean it. I'm going to squat it. I'm going to press it. Then I'm going to swing it. That I was just being efficient with my training at the time. And then down the road, there was like, oh no, that's a thing. That's called kettlebell flow. That's a flow. So, didn't always have that athletic background again from playing sports, but my dancing helped me through how I approach training even now. And I think that's also how I got gravitated towards functional strength and training too. Cause it's like how I want my body to feel better and I want to be more efficient in my day to day activities. How do I do it? All right, through functional strength training.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I think to give you a ton of credit, like as a dancer, that probably carried over so much, especially for the functional movements. Like you said, like your body awareness, your proprioception,
Yeah.
your
Mechanics.
rhythm.
Yeah. Understanding where hips are in relation to your knees, your ankles, all of that stuff for sure.
Which kind of brings me to a segue to the next point, which is maybe some of the differences that you might see with like or movements or what people should or shouldn't be doing between like clients, maybe Gen Pop or athletes are using a lot of these. It sounds like functional movements, kettlebell movements. And is there differences or things you should look at between populations?
You know, that comes up a lot, especially working with Gen Pop, of like, you shouldn't do that movement. You shouldn't with the Gen Pop. You can only do that with athletes. And I think like, and there's other two approaches of like, training and movement is not black and white. There is so much gray. And I think as professionals that we should lead more with that too, that, this movement might be great for Matt, but it's not great for Sarah. So what does it feel, So having that approach and understanding that it's like, well, it depends. It depends on the person. It depends on the individual. It depends on what is the goal too on that movement. And it can shift. Are there certain movements in a group setting and that I wouldn't recommend? Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I'm looking at it's more risk to reward too. And then also like, can we get that same goal? Can we reach that same goal in a more efficient manner? And I'm not, I don't want to say like, we don't teach the Olympic lifts. Like we don't teach barbell clean and jerks. We don't teach barbell snatches. They have a place and a purpose, 100. I personally do them for my own training. But when I look at like, all right, someone's coming in, they might be moving 3 times a week out of all the hours of the week. How can we get that same stimulus and work that same muscle, like the same muscle and same energy system? We could do a dumbbell snatch, and can they be successful sooner doing a dumbbell snatch? It's not versus a barbell snatch. That's more so like those are questions that I would ask like myself when I'm working in a group setting, when I'm doing programming for the studio, when I'm training one-on-one. It's more so of looking at that individual and seeing what is that ultimate goal and what is the most efficient way versus like their Gen Pop. I'm not going to do that, because then I think it limits us a lot. And then it's also like, well, maybe that individual is really capable of doing such movements like a box jump, but maybe not today. So let's teach them how to land. Let's teach them how to take off with 2 feet. And, even before we put a wedge out, and then we can teach them once they know how to land, they know how to take off. Now we can add a 3-inch, but to tell someone, oh, they're Gen Pop, they shouldn't be jumping on a 21-inch box jump. Well, maybe not right now, but how do we get them there too? So I think that's when it comes to as well as like professionals taking the responsibility of like, we're educators as well. And so it's just how do we teach them and how do we develop them?
Yeah, and I think a point you had made earlier was too about, or when I talked to you earlier about social media, the effect on that was like, are we focusing in too much on maybe some of these higher level drills versus on professionals? Is that like influencing our training a little bit versus do we need to be modifying more or choosing different exercises?
I
And so
think so.
yeah, you had made that point earlier.
With social media too, and I mean, it's great, right? There's so many wonderful things. Like we met through social
Yeah.
media, right? But then I think it's so easy, especially for influencers or fitness influencers. You want to put up a fine balance of like maybe their account is just for entertainment. So they're going to see the flashy, chaotic movements. And you ask that influencer, that professional, do you do those movements for your own training? More times than not, they probably will say no. And so I think as a consumer, as like, it's important to remind themselves too of like, okay, I guarantee they're not doing. I'm trying to think of like these outrageous combos that I'll see on Instagram and nothing's really coming up. Um, but
I'm trying.
like, are they really doing that? There's something to be said about the basics. There's a reason why a squat has been around since the beginning of time, or like a deadlift or a push up, right? Let's get really good at those. And then we can progress to more sophisticated movements if that's something that you're interested in, if you find that's beneficial in your own training. But yeah, like social media can create a little bit of chaos and confusion when especially so many people are like, I need to, I have this goal of like, I want, whether it's growing their account, being seen, things like that. But it's important to like get really, really good at the basics first. And then you can sprinkle in the more sophisticated movements because at some point, depending on the person's journey of training, it will be time to do those sophisticated movements. Like I'm thinking of in our own program, pretty much like year one, people were learning like a two-handed clean. We didn't have them do, here's two kettlebells, let's do a double clean into a double snatch, right? But through the program, it's like they've gradually have progressed to some such movements. So I think when it goes back to working with Gen Pop, we shouldn't limit them because they're Gen Pop. I think everyone has that athleticism in them, and that it's just really like, do we see it and can we pull it out of them and develop it? Or maybe even dust the cobwebs off. Maybe they had it and they played sports, growing up. I see that happen all the time. In fact, I have a woman. She's early 60s and she's brand spanking new to strength training, but she's been doing Pilates and never told me that she ever played sports because for her that was decades ago. And I was like, okay, so we're going to do some med ball slams. I have never seen her move so fast, so powerful. She had such intensity slamming that ball down. And I'm like, okay, here's a woman. She's in her 60s, has been doing Pilates, brand spanking new. And then she tells me, she's like, oh yeah, I used to play basketball, but that was in high school. And in my 20s, I was like, you still have it in you. You just haven't worked those muscles before. You haven't worked those fast twitch muscles in a while. And again, there's a perfect example. Woman in her 60s, should she be doing that? Absolutely, because we need to still work on like, what if you trip? How do you catch yourself? You've been training those muscles. So going back to like our certain movements, should we avoid? I'm big on it depends. Um, and that's for the consumer. And then going back to like, is there too much emphasis on these elite athletes? I always encourage those elite athletes or trainers or any fitness professionals. Your training is very different to someone who's been sitting at a desk for 8 hours and they move 3 times a week. So when you're working with them, and this is something that I tell my team too, like we don't jump into doing high knees, doing squat thrusts, doing even air squats. No, we work on spinal waves first, opening up their chest, unsticking their rib cage because they've been sitting for hours. So for the elite athletes and professionals, I think it's important to remind them that the people that we work with, unless you're training athletes and professionals, they aren't spending hours and hours into the gym. And so having some understanding and empathy with clients and people that you work with in a class setting is always so important too.
Totally. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And you mentioned a few times there the use of like either kettlebell cleans, kettlebell snatches. Just from your website, and I saw you guys did the bio, which I always love looking at.
I should
Kettlebell's your
have saved
favorite.
mine.
Yeah. Kettlebell's your favorite implement, favorite movements, favorite
If
equipment.
if you can only have one tool, I'd say it would be a kettlebell. They
Okay.
don't take up a lot of space. They're so versatile. And one of my instructors, his tool, you would think it's a barbell because of his style of training, his competition background and whatnot. And I asked him that the other day. I was like, what is your tool of choice? And he said a kettlebell. And I was like, it wouldn't be a barbell. And he said it for the exact same reasons too. Versatile. You can build strength and you can build power with it as well. There's so many ways you can vary, even just if you had one weight, like if I had a 16 kg, that was it. That's all I really need to do. That's all. Um, yes, I'd say kettlebell.
Love it. Love it. This is something that I think that I had asked you, and I think it speaks volumes for because you often don't see it, and I think you mentioned it a little bit earlier. Is what are you doing right now for your personal fitness?
Okay. So I'm definitely in like a maintenance mode. I feel really confident with my strength. I feel pretty balanced with my conditioning. And I was not always like that. I'd say like maybe 2 years ago, if I had to run a mile, my whole body would go into shock. But I worked on that. I worked on that. So currently my style of training and what I'm doing for training is I take lab classes. I take my own classes. And I have to say I'm the most balanced because even as professionals, if we're left to do our own programming, we're always going to do the movements we like and what we enjoy doing, right? I've always found it difficult to work on our weaknesses. So I take lab classes about 4, 5 times a week. And then recently because even in our strength classes, I'll feel my heart rates go up. And this is more for personal and reasons that I'll do one strength day on my own where I make sure my heart rate doesn't go through the roof. And that's just for like hormones and just trying to keep my balance and everything like that. Um, I have other instructors too I have one instructor, she's been training about 12, 15 years. And she's like, I'm the most athletic. I feel like I'm in the best shape of my life. And all I do is I take lab classes.
How cool
So
is that? That's
oh,
awesome.
it's so cool,
And no
right?
better proof than that.
I
It's
was
like,
just going to say, proof is in the pudding. You can
yeah,
take someone who is brand spanking new to strength training and to that style and see progress. But then you can take someone who's super seasoned and has been doing this for years and can say, I, I still get sore. I'll still get the good sore, but I also don't feel I feel really strong and agile. Where there's been programs that I've been on my own, I've put on my own, I've had my own coaches put, or just styles where I end up super fatigued, or I end up like just feeling broken, or my hips get tight, my joints get tight, which can happen in certain strength training.
definitely.
But really finding that balance of, all right, you're mobilizing, there's mobility in a programming, you're working on stability, you're working on power development, but you're still getting that strength. It's really hard to find that hybrid and to find that balance. So that's what I'm doing, and I've been doing it for about a year now,
Nice.
taking classes on a regular basis.
I think it's pretty rare that that the either the class trainers or the gym owners, just from what I've seen, and you tell me if that's different than your experience, but it's almost rare they end up doing the classes at their own gym. They're always like, remember, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. So to hear that, like, oh no, I just do the lab, like I do the class, they're good classes, like I do them, like that's pretty cool. Like you said,
It's super cool. And I understand all right, you're training for a race, you're training for a competition. But if you're like training for life, or we've had people too who haven't taken the classes and then they did their first 5K and they're like, I only took class to train for it. Like you're still getting that conditioning. So it is. And I've seen other different methods. And I think it's so important that as instructors or trainers or PTs that you practice what you preach. And I always question if you go and you take a class and maybe the instructor looks a certain way. And I'm like, I know you don't do this 6 days a week. You definitely lift. I
yeah,
know that, So it's very refreshing and it is super cool to be able to say that too. So
yeah,
I'll keep doing it. I feel like I'm in the best shape of that I've been either in my life or I've been in a long time. And I just prioritize take class. It's 50 minutes. Don't need anything else after that.
that's awesome. I love
Yeah.
that. I did want to ask a quick question about recovery because I as a PT, I always find it fascinating about just recovering from workouts, overcoming injuries. So what are you doing for that?
Recovery. I honestly, I make sure I take rest days. I'm a solid like 4 or 5 times a week and then I'm good. And then also too, knowing what intensity level am I going at? I'm not going 85% every day, So for when it comes to recovery, like I personally don't get a lot of body work done. I don't ever feel like I really need it, but I do make sure I rest. I've now in this phase of my life, in my 20s was a very different story that I don't, if I didn't work out 2, 3 days in a row, I'm not going to panic. I'm not going to just magically lose all that muscle, all our strength overnight. So I really do lean into like, it's a recovery day. It just means a rest day. And I've always prioritized priming my body properly before training. So that also helps with recovery. And that's also why I feel like I don't really need a lot of like body work, massages, cupping, acupuncture, cold plunge, sauna. They all are super beneficial. But I'm also like, what is our approach? If you're training and you're constantly broken, maybe we need to tweak something, right?
Sure.
Two things that I do on a regular basis that I've recent sauna 1 to 2 times a week, and then walks as well. I'm like, since moving down here, walking and getting outside.
Yeah.
Um, Again, not just to recover my body, but our nervous system, our mind, all of those other things. Like our body works truly as one unit. So are you checking those items off too? Um, and I prioritize sleep as
Totally.
well. Yeah. So I think having those things, like, how am I priming my body? What intensity levels? Like I said, I have 1 day a week that I do train, but I'm making sure my heart rate's not spiking. Um, and sleep, and then walks and some sauna. Sauna's just like a bonus. It feels really good and I enjoy it.
It's funny being from New England. We have people, obviously snowbirds, people vacationing or going down to Florida every so often. At to a certain extent, because I see obviously a PT, I'm seeing a lot of people who are injured or just getting prehab maintenance with tune up. Almost 99.9% of the time, if someone takes a trip to Florida, they come back feeling better. And the joke is that like, oh, there's something in the water, like the salt water down there is healing, but it's probably like what you said. Either they get a few more rest days, they get some sunshine, they're walking, the heat probably feels good. Like, so all the things that like it's which is cool. It's like smart training at the end of the
Yes. Water, there is like, don't quote me on this one now, but there is research as far as like what living by water or going into the ocean too. Like, this might be some woo woo stuff, but it
day.
can be a little woo woo, that it is like calming, and there are such great benefits to your body of like just being by the ocean or going into the ocean too. So it does, I think all of it supports. And so that's why I don't really have a very, I mean, maybe that is my specific
Yeah.
recovery.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm on board with that. I'm close enough to the ocean where I try to get in, and I mean not this time of year, but
Yeah.
I'll drink that Kool-Aid. I'm on board with that. All right, so a couple of just wrap up questions for you, and then
Yeah.
I'll add here. One more on kind of on clients and how to find success as a client or someone working out. So any habits or what have you found to be the biggest? I call them like keystone habits that might unlock other habits, or tendencies or keys for client success that you found as in your line of work as a trainer, gym owner.
First and foremost is meeting them where they are. I think a lot of times they're excited, but they're also nervous being adults and having to be vulnerable, saying, I can't do this, or I have 80 pounds to lose. That's a lot of truth that is hard for someone to put their ego aside and say, right? So creating a space where you are meeting them where they are, so that way they can progress and grow and reach certain goals, is really important. I've always focused on that. And then also creating that space where, I tell them, I'm not going to be your cheerleader. If you need a hype girl, I'm not your girl, but I will create a space where you feel comfortable. So that way because I mean, especially strength training, that can be scary, right? Or the unknown. I don't know how to squat. I don't know how to deadlift. But if you create a space where they're comfortable to try, that's where I see great success. And people are able to truly start off with like that blank slate. They've never done anything, to progressing to, I just ran my first half, or I just did my first weightlifting competition. I PR'd weight beyond what I ever thought, and that comes from all levels too. So meeting people where they are, creating a space where they feel comfortable and they're open to learning and trying and developing, and then focusing on consistency. And whenever I start working with someone new, they don't want to hear that. They want to hear the magic pill, that magic potion. You do this, and then you'll reach those goals. And I cannot drive home enough the importance of consistency and showing up for yourself, because then those goals will be reached. So those are like the biggest habits that I really try and like I focus on with clients of like, first I create that environment, and then we're consistency. Consistency is key.
I love that. Those are great points for people that are listening. The flip side of that question, or asked in a different way, what is one thing that you've seen that's maybe a common myth or a misconception about the gym that you may see with fitness, health, nutrition, that where people are actually they're mistaken. They're thinking one thing, but it's actually the opposite.
It's like that all or nothing mentality. If I just hit it really hard, I'm going to lose those 10 pounds. I need to be in the gym 6 times a week doing doubles in order to reach that goal. No, you probably need to move a couple of times a week, rework your nervous system, make sure you're sleeping. Are you hydrating? Or, and I see that a lot with nutrition too. I need to eliminate fats. I need to eliminate carbohydrates. No, what are you eating? Oh, it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon and you just had like a Dunkin' Donuts coffee that had extra sugar and a ton of cream. That's what we need to rework, you know? So finding that balance too of in trusting that these small changes that gradually happen, because we can't do everything at once, is how you'll create changes long.
Totally. Totally.
But
Yeah.
yeah, that idea, that myth that it's all or nothing, because that's setting people up to, yeah, you'll be successful for maybe a month, but you'll either fall off, you'll get burnt out, you'll get injured. It's not sustainable. So then you'll stop, you know? But those are hard truths for people to really accept and to then practice.
And I think like bridging those 2 points together of like consistency is one of the most important things you could possibly have. It's like it's very hard to be like, all right, well, I'm gonna go 150% as long as I can. It's very hard to get both of those at the same time.
Yes.
You have to find that middle ground.
And it's also, this is might be cliche, but it's like trusting the process, trusting the professionals, whether it's a nutritionist, a PT, a trainer, that this is the path, because people always want to do more. I've even had it recently with members. They're coming 3, 4, 5 times a week, not seeing the results. I should add personal training to it. Probably not. You don't need to do that. But like, you got the training down, check, keep coming 4 or 5 times a week. Now, how's your nutrition? Maybe you should focus on that, or maybe you should focus on the recovery. What are your sleep patterns like? You know, what are your stress levels like?
Totally. We're in this for the long game.
Yes.
We're in
Yes.
this for life, not just 6 weeks. It's not a 6 week
Exactly.
challenge. Oh, that's great. All right. So last question I have for you. Do you have I'll kind of phrase this 2 different ways. Do you have like a favorite quote or mantra, or the way I like to phrase it is like you get a billboard for the day, maybe in Delray somewhere, maybe on Atlantic Ave, you get your own billboard, something you can say to your community.
Oh my gosh. You know, you did ask me that question earlier, and I was like, you should just pull out a quote that you like. Um, but I don't really have one. The biggest thing is that anything that really speaks the truth and that is clear, and to the point too. Like I said, most people don't want to hear do strength training 3 times a week, get some walks in, hydrate, and sleep. They don't want to hear that, right? They want it, it's got to be more complicated than that. Really keeping it simple and keeping it honest and true. And that could be for different for everyone too.
Well, Ivan, I like what you just said right there. We'll put that on the billboard.
Put that on the app.
Just do it. Just hammer it home.
Yes.
And then just to let people know, where's the best place to find you, social media, all that stuff.
Absolutely. So I manage a couple accounts, but my fitness account is Coach Sarah with an H. I'll be like one of the first two that pop up.
Mm.
And you can also follow the lab method. I manage that one. We have a lot of fun. It's a balance of educational, what we are doing, what we're all about. So if anyone is in the Delray area, they could come and check us out because that is also where I currently reside in Delray, Florida.
Very cool. Very cool. Awesome. Well, I will be in Delray area sometime in April, so I'll have to swing by and get a class in.
Please, please, we can get a class in, we can get a workout together, then we can go and get some good food. I would love for us to connect in person.
Awesome. That'd be fun. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you.
And Rocks Lab, we're signing off.
Awesome.
And then it